was a suggestion during the week that people would have to prove that they are over the age of 18 before being able to watch online pornography. This is a federal government move. It is said to try and prevent children watching damaging sexual videos. I'm not sure how this would actually work and whether it would solve the problem that exists. I know you've got some strong views on this, Natasha. Joining us is Melinda Tankard-Rice, author of several books, including Getting Real, Challenging the Sexualisation of Girls and Big Porn. Melinda, good morning.
Yes, good morning, Steve.
Good idea?
Look, it's a start. I agree with you. It won't solve the whole problem, not at all. Children are being exposed to rape porn, torture porn, sadism porn, incest porn from very early ages, which age now 8, 9 years of old. However, you know, it's a start. It would put one level of protection in the way of children with one click entering that kind of hardcore content. So we welcome it.
Wonder how it would work, though. I mean, if it's just about are you over 18, click this button, which they often have when they're selling alcohol online, for example. I mean, what ID would you need to use? I guess parents can set their computer up to have a more overt permission button somehow. How would it work?
Steve, let me say this. If it was merely clicking a button, ticking a box saying, yes, I'm over 18, we would have nothing to do with it. That would be just a stupid, ridiculous scheme. One of the models proposed is that there is a third-party approved verifier where the individual wanting to access pornography takes their identification to prove they're over 18. Then they are given a digital pass that they use in an ongoing way. There are different models proposed, and that's why the e-Safety Commissioner has been tasked with the job of exploring what would be the most effective and workable model to protect at least some children from access to content which eroticises and normalises violent acts, which dehumanises women, and which has become the world's largest department of education for our children.
Melinda, Natasha here, you make an excellent point there. What concerns me greatly about exposure to really hardcore violent pornography and the degradation in many circumstances of women is the fact that they're being exposed to it as young as 8, we know now, and they decide to watch more and more and more hardcore and violent porn, and this is how they're learning about sex. They're believing that this is normalised behaviour to hurt women, to degrade women, and that young girls think that this is what is acceptable as well.
That's exactly right, Natasha. My concern also, I've been collecting the stories of hundreds of girls in schools where I speak around the country, and they describe the daily experience of being groped, being sexually harassed, being demanded to send pictures, having dick pics and masturbation videos sent to them by boys, including girls in year 7. Girls are telling me that boys are making sexual moaning noises at them, even in the classroom.
Really?
And it's,
Steve, it's huge. It's a huge
hundreds
problem.
of girls telling me this, even just recently in WA and a week in Queensland. This is the daily experience girls describe, being filmed up their skirts, down their blouses, being rubbed up against at school, being compared to the bodies of porn stars. Even 13-year-olds are telling me these stories. And again, all of this is influenced by porn and porn culture. This is where boys are learning what girls want. Boys even think it's appropriate to try to strangle girls and enact these hardcore violent acts on them. This is the state of things, and that's why we welcomed this very bare minimum of proof of age protection to protect, as I said, at least some children from exposure. We think it's going to take too long, though. 12 to 18 months is too long. Every day children are being harmed and damaged. We'd like to see some more urgent action on this.
Here's a naive question for me. Sorry, Natasha.
Right.
Can't we block this stuff from coming into the country? I know we'll have huge free speech debates and arguments about it, but why does this filthy garbage and dangerous porn able to be accessed at all anyway?
Well, that's a very great question, Steve. You know, politics is the art of the possible, and we take what we can get. So we'll take this but you raise a much bigger and more important question. Why should this misogynist, pro-rape, pro-violence material be streamed at all for the profits of a mega industry, the global pornography industry, whose vested interests continue to be put before the well-being of the community? The global research on this is solid about porn as a driver of violence and aggression and forming harmful attitudes, especially in our young men. And so we would like to see, much bolder, much bigger action on this, given the documented harms.
Melinda, the evidence is clear. I would say most of us have realised for at least a decade. I would almost say we've lost a whole generation of young girls and boys because
I agree.
People didn't realise how huge it was. It is I saw someone speak the other day saying the violence has increased dramatically even over the last 5 years. What would you like to see right now? Because I find it interesting. Facebook was allowed to take down all the news websites very, very quickly. There are the avenues to stop this if they want. So is it profit-driven? Does the government not want to act? What can happen right now to stop our young women and men being seriously harmed?
I agree, and that's a great question. It is totally profit-driven. I don't believe that violence against women as depicted in pornography, which tells boys that no means yes and that all women want to be raped and violated, deserves free speech protection. Surely, as a society, we should come together and acknowledge that for the common good should come above the profits of this industry. So we call for a whole-of-community approach. We need greater regulation of the big tech industries that are profiting from this content. We need more education about the harms of pornography to help more young women to enforce their personal boundaries and to resist the pressures, and for more boys to realise how this is damaging them also. They are being preyed on by this global predatory industry. They are being groomed. They are set up for failure. They're not going to be able to have healthy, happy, respectful, intimate partnerships. I agree with you. I fear we have lost a generation, but certainly in our work in schools, we're trying to reach some of them and help them to see how this is harming them. We need parents to be informed. We need schools to take action. I'm being told boys are viewing porn even in the classroom, at the back of the classroom with the laptop open. There needs to be a crackdown on porn use within the school and, of course, on devices. Parents can be doing the right thing at home with filtering, but they're telling me their kids are being exposed on the school bus, at the school camp, in the school yard. So this needs a whole-of-community approach to recognise the devastation being caused and for all of us to take action.
Yeah, it's an issue that I didn't realise how big it was. Melinda, we know that our authorities, whether it be the Australian Federal Police, whether it be our spy agencies or our state police, can track people who are accessing child porn, which, is just so disgusting that it's beyond even thinking about. Why wouldn't we issue a warning to say that the authorities know who's accessing any porn? You don't need to then necessarily put a total ban on it because you'd buy a big argument for yourself. But I think both with this new idea of having to prove you're over 18 and enter some sort of ID into a website somewhere, is that not in itself going to discourage people who slyly look at porn thinking no one knows they're doing it?
It remains to be seen because we haven't tried this yet. So we don't have the data to see if it may act as some kind of deterrent. You'd like to think so. However, the demand for this content is great. The most violent genres of pornography are the most popular. Also the growth, and you've touched on this, of child sexual exploitation material, which our authorities are finding it impossible to deal with. They just cannot keep on top of this. And, of course, the big tech companies rarely cooperate. They don't provide information even where there is often criminal activity. For example, Australian men accessing children in the Philippines for something called live distant child abuse, where the child is commissioned to be live abused. That's a hugely popular thing now, and Australian men are among the biggest purchasers of this.
God,
this. So the authorities are overwhelmed. Everyone's overwhelmed. As I said, we need much more action to deal with this epidemic. We talk about the COVID pandemic. We've got another pandemic here going on as well, which is wreaking great destruction globally.
Melinda, there's growing evidence that they can directly now link exposure to hardcore violence, awful porn now, to violence against women.
Correct.
And we know now 2 people every day, men as well, but 2 women every day are dying at the hands of their partners. We've seen the government pump money into protecting women for AVOs, all of these different things.
Correct.
Yet we're not having a real conversation in this country about the fact that it goes back to respect. I think you can link violence, respect, consent, everything to the fact that both girls and boys today do not understand what a respectful sexual relationship is anymore.
That's exactly the case, and I wrote a long essay for the ABC making that exact point, that you can have the best consent and respectful relationships programs in the world, but they don't stand a chance against the global pornography industry, which undermines those good attempts, those good efforts. The fact is that pornography is a driver of that violence against women that we claim to want to address. If we truly wanted to address it, we wouldn't be allowing young people access to rape and torture and sadism sites, which teach them that women love violence, that violence is erotic. I now have young girls saying to me, "He went for my throat," without even asking.
Yes.
Where do boys learn that?